Hey everybody, hope you're off to a great day wherever you are. It is June 6th, 2022. It's a Monday. We have a big week of news ahead, a lot of items just to have on your radar and be aware of. And then, of course, if we learned anything over the last several weeks, is that the unexpected can really change the news cycle. So we'll leave some room for that as well. One of the reasons why I like to prioritize a little bit of history, a dash of history in our news coverage, is history always gives us perspective. It always provides a little added context for the time and place we're in right now. We're getting that certainly today, because June 6, 1944 is the anniversary of D-Day. D-Day is a huge, significant battle, if not the most significant battle of World War II, and one of the most significant military operations in military history. And it happened on this day 78 years ago, and we have some of the statistics on our website that really map out just how dynamic this operation truly was. A couple things to note on this. D-Day is a term that we use to reference this specific day, but it's actually a generic military term that can be used even today to reference the start of an operation. So D-Day is the start of an operation, not necessarily the title of the operation itself. In fact, the operation itself here was called Operation Overlord, but that's not something that we use when we talk about this casually. Just to give you an idea of the significance when it comes to the loss of life, there were more Americans killed in action on D-Day, on this day in 1944, than killed in action for the entire war in Afghanistan, America's longest war. What's interesting here is that we know that to be true, but the precise numbers of killed in actions, of casualties, those injured, those missing, have never completely been confirmed. In fact, it's something that we're struggling with even today on SmartHER News, going over some of the research that we have used over the last several years, where there's been a question of what is the final number, just because of the sheer numbers of soldiers that participated on this particular day and the violence of the battle. Some say 2,500 Americans lost their lives on this day in 1944. Others say it's more like 4,000, over 4,000, could be even higher than that. So that's also important. Why does D-Day matter? It matters because it really started to change the shifting momentum in World War II. You had America with our allies going into enemy territory, Nazi-held France. And this was a bold move. And it was one of those moves that started to change the momentum or built on a momentum shift in the war, and then forever changed the future in Europe and for the rest of the world. So this is a really important day to remember. And we have more of this on our website. One of the images you're likely to see on this day is a very famous photograph. I mean, we're lucky that so many photojournalists were present that day and survived that day. But there are also members of the military who are photographing this event. And so we have some incredible images. One of the ones you'll likely see is called Into the Jaws of Death. And it shows the soldiers getting off of their vessels and going on to the beach and facing just the incredible firepower of the Germans there. So it gives us an idea of what courage looked like in 1944, and perhaps gives us some context for what courage could look like in 2022. There's a lot happening around the world. There's been talk about World War III. You've certainly heard it over the last several weeks, last several months. So just real quick, two news items I want you to know about that's occurred over the last 24 hours is twofold. We're seeing something in Asia, we're seeing something in Europe. So over the last several weeks, last several months, North Korea has more aggressively test-fired missiles. We really care about North Korea because we know that North Korea is a nuclear-armed nation. We know North Korea is a state sponsor of terror, which means that they invest or support in terrorist groups or terrorist activity. And because of the technology that they have, and because they are an isolated nation, we have no diplomatic relations with North Korea, few countries do, then we're always wondering, what is North Korea's strategy? What is their plan? Why these provocative actions over the last several weeks? So we're holding military drills with South Korea, our ally. We do this on a regular basis. This bothers North Korea. And so North Korea on Sunday fires off some more test missiles, and then the United States and South Korea fires back. Again, these missiles that landed in the sea. Now, the military exercises are using real fire. They're not using pretend weapons here. And that's why we always have to watch these activities, because it's one miscalculation. It's one missile that doesn't go where it's supposed to be that could actually kick off a much larger event. So I want you aware of what's happening in Asia. That's something important to note. The actions of South Korea and America are new. We haven't recently responded in the same way. As quickly as North Korea fires and tests missiles, we respond. And it's part of us showing, according to reports, that this is how we're going to respond if this is real. So that's happening in Asia. In the meantime, you have some military exercises that are happening in Europe with NATO, with Sweden and Finland, not members of NATO, but want to be. And so Russia always gets a little bit agitated when these military drills are held because of what Russia perceives as the encroachment of NATO onto their territory. Of course, we're still watching Russia in Ukraine try to inch further and further west from their eastern positions. So we're going to watch that. I was reading a article that was referencing one of the co-presidents of Morgan Stanley, big bank here, obviously in the United States. And he had a really interesting comment. I'm paraphrasing here, but this sort of brings everything together. He said, we've been through a 100-year pandemic, or we're still in a 100-year pandemic. We're witnessing the first invasion in 75 years in Europe. He's talking about Russia and Ukraine. And we have inflation all over the world for the first time in 40 years. He's like, this is the dawn of a new era. What the era means for the financial markets, we don't know. But we're on the verge of something new, and we have to be aware of the significant time that we're sitting in. I thought that was an important comment. So let's go back to the United States here and what to expect. We expect inflation data this week on Friday. So you're going to see some talk about inflation statistically. You probably are already feeling that inflation, that your dollar seems to be buying you less. And so we're going to watch for that later on in the week. On Thursday, we got to pay close attention to what's happening in Washington, D.C., a public hearing from the House Select Committee that was investigating the events of January 6th. On Capitol Hill. The riot that took place on Capitol Hill is holding a public hearing in prime time at 8 o'clock. So most commonly, lawmakers don't start hearings in the evening. They're probably like the rest of us. They'd rather be home relaxing with their family. So a lot of hearings usually start 10, 11, 12 o'clock Eastern time. So this is starting at 8 o'clock Eastern, which is very strategic because what happens at that time? You have the major news stations holding their primetime shows that get the most viewership. So now there's going to be a live event to really try to capture the news cycle. What are we going to see? We're not completely sure yet. We saw some public hearings in the past when this committee talked to law enforcement that was present that day. So we expect a couple of these sessions. Some of the sessions will offer some recorded video of past sessions or past research that was developed or gathered during this time. Most of this committee's activity happened behind closed doors. So this is important to watch to understand, well, what are the end results of this investigation? We're not going to get the end results this week. We do expect to get it in the fall. Remember, the midterms are in November. So likelihood is before the midterms, but this is going to be important because we're going to see what this committee has been up to. What are they going to put forward on Thursday that could be newsworthy? That's important. Speaking of newsworthy, the Supreme Court at any moment, even while we're talking right now, could release a decision on any number of really important cases. There's been a lot of talk, of course, about the abortion law case that was focused on Mississippi. And what happens in June is that the Supreme Court releases its decisions before its summer recess. We don't know when, though. The decisions are released, or the opinions are released, usually at 10 o'clock Eastern time. But you don't know if it's happening on Tuesday or it's happening on Friday. And so every day it's sort of this tense watch of, well, when will the Supreme Court release some of this information? Could happen in early June, could happen in late June. The likelihood is across your phone on any given day, you might see an alert about this. This is why you're seeing this alert, is because we are expecting these decisions. So they used to be handed out by paper, by the way. You used to get these opinions in your hand. That's the way that news organizations would get them. And the news organizations would be outside the Supreme Court waiting and watching. But the pandemic changed that. So we can check on the website at 10 o'clock Eastern time and we see what actually is coming down for the Supreme Court. I want to just finish on this. A lot of you have been asking questions about what's going on with the economy. We're going to have more about that this week. Where's the most expensive gas in America? How much is it? Apparently it's in Mendocino. It's in Mendocino. I'm getting all choked up about it. It's in Mendocino, California. Really pretty town, Northern California coast, tourist area, one gas station. $9.60 a gallon. The gas station owner says this is what she has to charge because she has bills coming due in just a short horizon that she has to meet. Her costs have gone up exorbitantly. This is what she has to charge. Others will raise questions about that charge because in the rest of California, it's a couple dollars cheaper. But depending on your state, the gas prices are going to look different. Bottom line is the national average is up over a year ago. Right now it's at $4.86 a gallon. It'll change tomorrow, by the way. The number changes all the time, but that's about what it is, national average, and it'll depend on where you're living and what sort of fees are included where you're living by your state. That will determine your price. But $9.60, just some perspective. So whether or not you're driving a car, you're getting an Amazon delivery that's affected by transportation fees, that matters to all of us. So we'll keep an eye on that. Questions and comments, please let me know. And all of our information is always on smarternews.com. So you can sit, relax, peruse, get linked to some really reliable sources, and hopefully enjoy the news again. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Quick, concise, nonpartisan, Smarter News, a refuge from the storm. I'm Jenna. Thank you for choosing Smarter.